Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. My name is Shekar Krishnan. I'm a Democrat running for City Council to represent our communities of Elmhurst and Jackson Heights. It is so nice to see everyone today, and I'm so happy to have everyone come out for a really important topic of discussion today, joined by a very special and amazing friend and also an incredible activist in our city too. This event was going to be bilingual, both in English and Spanish. So we'll be switching kind of throughout, back and forth. But what I wanted to say was, one of the most essential platforms of our campaign is LGBTQIA+ advocacy, and especially when it comes to the advocacy to end and eliminate transphobia in our community and across our city. Our trans community, especially trans women of color, face so much discrimination in every aspect of our society, from housing to healthcare to employment to within the criminal system, and face just an onslaught of hate and prejudice and transphobia, both in our streets right here on Roosevelt Avenue, all the way across our city as well. And so today, we're going to be talking about a couple different things. One, what is the status of trans rights in our city today, too? And two, a really important effort right now to repeal the Walking Wild trans ban, which has really ensnared so many trans people, especially trans women of color, in a cycle of incarceration, oppression, and exploitation that needs to end with the repeal of this ban. I am so happy to introduce today an incredible fighter, advocate, someone who inspires me so much, Cecilia Gentili, who has done such amazing work across our city to really fight for the rights of trans people and to end transphobia in every aspect of our society. Before we turn it over to Cecilia, just brevemente en español, muy buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Shekar Krishnan, soy demócrata y estoy postulándome para el Consejo Municipal en las comunidades de Jackson Heights y Elmhurst. Y bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos por acompañarnos esta noche con este evento muy especial. Hoy, esta noche, vamos a hablar sobre la abogacía por la comunidad trans. Sabemos nosotros que por toda la ciudad, inclusivamente en nuestra comunidad de Jackson Heights y Elmhurst también, la comunidad trans está enfrentando hostigamiento y discriminación en todos los aspectos de la sociedad, desde las viviendas hasta el empleo, hasta también en el sistema penal. Y tenemos que unirnos en la lucha para terminar con y eliminar transfobia y odio contra la gente trans. Así que esta noche estamos muy felices porque tenemos con nosotros una gran inspiración, una luchadora, una inspiración para mí, Cecilia Gentili, que está luchando por los derechos de la comunidad trans desde hace décadas. Así que, bueno, con este programa vamos a hacerlo de una manera bilingüe, con una discusión en inglés y también en español, también con las preguntas. Y lo que podemos hacer es que, primeramente, vamos a hablar una discusión una a la otra, Cecilia conmigo en inglés y español con las preguntas. Y después vamos a abrir el evento para las preguntas de toda la gente que está presente ahora. What I said was we're going to start by having a little discussion with Cecilia and myself in both English and Spanish about different issues. And then we'll open it up to everyone in the audience to ask questions as well. So thanks so much for joining. I want to turn it over. As I said, Cecilia has been such an incredible advocate for trans rights in our communities of Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, in New York City and across the country. Truly an inspiration for me. I am so grateful, Cecilia, that you've joined us tonight and we can have this conversation. So I want to welcome you and turn it over to you to say a few words about your work across our city right now for trans advocacy.
Ay, Dios mío, que habla mejor que un hispano.
Gracias.
Conozco a muchos hispanos que no hablan tan bien el español.
Muchísimas gracias, Cecilia. No, es importante, ¿no? Ese exceso de lenguajes también.
Bueno, felicidades. Me encanta que hayas aprendido a hablar español y con tanta buena calidad. No voy a decir quién, pero hay una persona que cada vez que habla en español me da de nervios cuando en la mañana, cuando da su
Como el
news.
Bloomito, el mayor Bloomberg. No,
Oh my God, I hate it. So, hi everybody. I was just commenting on how good he speaks Spanish, and it's like it's really refreshing because so many people, specifically elected officials that try to speak Spanish and they don't do it well. They just get on my nerves.
I gotta say like Mayor Bloomberg.
So, thank you for such a warm introduction. I am very happy to be here with all of you, and I am very happy to proudly say that I am supporting Shekar in this road to the city council. I have full confidence that he will become the city council for District 25, and I have no doubt that not that he only will make it, but that he will be doing amazing work for our community. And when I say our community, I'm not just talking about the trans community. I'm talking about immigrants. I'm talking about undocumented people. I'm talking about Latinx people. I'm talking about sex worker. I'm talking about women. I'm talking about people who live in poverty, though. So I am so excited to be here. Un poquito en español, estoy muy feliz de estar aquí, estoy muy orgullosa de estar aquí y estoy muy feliz de ofrecer mi apoyo y mi soporte incondicional a Shekar para su candidatura para City Council por el Distrito 25. Yo estoy segura de que, no estoy solo segura de que él va a ser el elegido, pero estoy también segura de que él va a hacer cosas muy importantes para la comunidad. Y cuando digo comunidad, no solamente me refiero a la comunidad transgénero, me refiero a la comunidad inmigrante, me refiero a la comunidad indocumentada, me refiero a la comunidad latinx, me refiero a la comunidad de trabajadores sexuales, me refiero a la comunidad de mujeres, todas las identidades con las que yo me identifico. Él tiene un plan para una campaña para esto. So again, I'm just so excited and so happy to be here. So, like I was saying, like you were saying, like my name is Cecilia, and I am a trans advocate. I have a small company that do consulting, trying to help nonprofit and for-profit spaces become more LGBTQ friendly and sensitive. And one of the most important aspects of my work is gender equity. And I am so happy to be able to do this work, for living. Is such a privilege. So mi nombre es Cecilia, tengo una pequeña compañía, una consultoría, y hago trabajo para organizaciones sin no lo puedo decir en español, sí, Shekar lo dice mejor que yo, sin fines de lucro y para organizaciones con fines de lucro, para ayudarles a todos ellos a tener un poquito más de sensibilidad para la comunidad LGBT, y todo mi trabajo se refiere a equidad de género. Eso es lo más importante para mí.
Muchísimas gracias, Cecilia. Y one thing you also forgot to mention too is that you have a amazing role in the show Pose too, which is an incredible show that everyone should watch. That has really incredible stories too about the fight for trans rights over decades. And Cecilia is in that too, and I was so happy when I saw Cecilia, and I didn't expect it. So when I saw you, I was like, wait, is that Cecilia? And I was like, oh my god, I was so happy to see it. So
what do you think? What do you think Miss Orlando is gonna do in season 3?
I don't know, but I'm excited to watch. I am totally excited to watch. I was so happy to see it. But lo que di en inglés es que Cecilia es una actriz también y tiene un rol en el show Pose, que es un show espectacular sobre la lucha por los derechos de la gente trans. Así que ustedes tienen que mirarlo en la tele y no se lo pierdan. Bueno. My first question for you, Cecilia, and again, thank you so much for joining us, is if you can tell us a little bit about what is the status or what is the situation of trans rights in our city today? How has the trans community in particular, how trans people have been affected by COVID, and what are the most important concerns in the fight for true trans equality and dignity in our city today? Brevemente en español. ¿Cuál es la situación generalmente con los derechos y la igualdad y la dignidad con la comunidad trans en esta ciudad ahora, especialmente después de esta pandemia, y cómo esta pandemia afecta o afectó a la comunidad trans?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. You know, unfortunately, I have to say that, the community continues to face an incredible amount of discrimination. The community is a community that, as much as we try to put ourselves in the map, we continue to live in the margins of society. I have to say that COVID-19 not only affected the community especially, but I have to say that it has like highlighted problems that were there already. COVID-19 didn't, bring any specific new problems. COVID-19 just reaffirmed and highlighted problems that had been there forever. La comunidad transgénero continúa enfrentando problemas terribles. La comunidad transgénero continúa viviendo en los márgenes de la sociedad. La sociedad transgénero, más allá de que continuamos haciendo trabajo para ser visibles, no somos vistos como ciudadanos de primera categoría. La pandemia de COVID no solo trajo problemas específicos de COVID, pero ha reafirmado y ha traído a la luz problemas que teníamos desde siempre, y con COVID se hicieron más notorios y más graves. For example, you all may know that COVID took one of my best friends and a mentor and a figure that whoever next trans advocate can come in the city, nobody will be able to fill the shoes of Lorena Borjas. So we lost Lorena Borjas due to COVID. But COVID was just the last stroke. The real issue was discrimination.
Yep.
Because Lorena was sick for 10 days. She was with fever, she couldn't breathe, she had pain all over her body, and she didn't say anything.
Wow.
She didn't say anything until she called me to cancel a meeting that we had. And when I asked her, she told me, and I said, Lorena, you have to go to the hospital. And Lorena said, no, I'm not going to the hospital. So I'm not saying that the situation would have been different, but I'm saying that it's a big chance that if she went to the hospital early with her symptoms, she could be alive right now, you know? So COVID, of course, is a terrible problem. But the problem for trans people sometimes is this incredible mistrust that we have with the healthcare system. It is something that we need to work on because we don't feel safe in the healthcare system. You know, we don't feel welcome in the healthcare system. So that's something that, you know, is not new to, to COVID. It's something that we've been working for, that we've been experiencing forever. So, como muchos de ustedes deben saber, yo he perdido una de mis más grandes amigas, una de mis más grandes mentoras, una persona que sea quien venga quien venga como nuevo activista o activista a hacer trabajo por la comunidad, nadie va a poder llenar los zapatos de la señora Lorena Borjas. Lorena fue una de mis grandes amigas. Lorena estuvo enferma, se sintió enferma con fiebre, con escalofríos, con dolor, con tos por 10 días y no le dijo nada a nadie, se quedó en su casa calladita. Y cuando yo la llamé un día, ella me contó cómo se estaba sintiendo y yo le dije, Lorena, tenés que ir al hospital. Y Lorena me dijo, no, yo no voy al hospital. Lo que yo estoy diciendo aquí es que no sabemos si la situación no hubiera sido la misma y ella hubiera fallecido de todas maneras, pero lo que estoy diciendo es que hay una chance de que Lorena pudiera haber estado viva si ella hubiera ido al hospital al principio. Y la realidad de todo es que aquí es que ella no quería ir al hospital porque hay una historia de discriminación, una historia de desconfianza con el sistema de salud en la ciudad de Nueva York de parte de la comunidad transgénero. Y eso es algo de que tenemos que trabajar. Es algo que no vino por COVID, es algo que ya estaba ahí. Lo que COVID hizo fue remarcarlo y reactivar esa historia de discriminación y esa historia de desconfianza de la comunidad transgénero con el sistema de salud. And that's something that we all need to change. We need to make sure that trans people are able to go to the doctor and feel comfortable. It's not only that, because Lorena was not just trans. Lorena's scars with the healthcare system were also for being an undocumented person for so many years. Me as an undocumented individual, I remember going to the hospital many times and thinking that, that they were going to help me. And, sometimes they help me, but then I end up with incredible bills, right? Bills of like thousands of dollars that I was not able to pay. And that's so discouraging. Of course that people are not going to go to the doctor. They're scared that they're going to have to pay so much money, So that's not only that. Lorena was also a sex worker for many years, and she was mistreated in hospital many, many times, looked down for being a sex worker. So Lorena had a history of terrible experiences with the healthcare system. Because we experience terrible things in the healthcare system, trans people, immigrants, undocumented people, sex workers do not go to the doctor. And that's why we have so many much problems that the people who are not trans or who are not immigrants or who are not sex workers. And we need to make sure that people get the same services. Lo que estaba diciendo es que Lorena no solamente tenía esta desconfianza por ser trans, Lorena tenía esta desconfianza también por ser inmigrante, por ser indocumentada, por ser trabajadora sexual. Ella experimentó muchísimas malas experiencias, como yo misma, cuando era indocumentada en este país. Me acuerdo de haber ido al hospital un par de veces pensando que necesitaba ayuda y que la necesitaba, y un par de semanas más tarde recibí unos biles increíbles, de increíble cantidad de dinero, miles de dólares que tenía que pagar a los hospitales. Entonces, por supuesto que la próxima vez que voy a estar enferma, no voy a ir al hospital porque no puedo mantener ese tipo de dinero, no tengo ese tipo de dinero. Entonces, lo que estoy diciendo es que COVID lo que ha hecho ha sido remarcar problemas que estaban aquí por mucho, mucho tiempo.
I'm glad that you mentioned all of those things, Cecilia, and really made the point. Well, a couple things. One is, we have this conversation and all the work continues in the memory of Lorena Borjas too. She was such a force, such a figure, both in the work that she did to help so many right here on Roosevelt Avenue or around our city, but also in the larger fight too for dignity and equality and making sure that trans rights are human rights too. And I know how close you both were, and I also was so moved. And for those who can check it out too, I remember the op-ed that you had done in the New York Times too about your friendship with Lorena too after she had passed away. So I'm glad you mentioned her too, because you both have done such incredible work over years to raise visibility to all of these issues for trans people. And I think the other point too that you mentioned, which is absolutely right, is that all of these issues, those of us who are involved in different movements in our city around LGBTQ issues, around, for me, in housing issues and the housing movement, we know that how deep the inequality is, how much so many are suffering in our city. We've seen it with our own eyes. And COVID has just unmasked that for everyone to see and made it worse. But there were all pre-existing inequalities at such shocking levels, whether it's trans people being discriminated against when they go for just a doctor's visit or to the hospital, whether it's a tenant in a building where a landlord has taken a sledgehammer and destroyed the building to force them out. All of these fights have been made worse by COVID. And I think to your point too, all of these issues are trans and LGBTQ issues too, right? Housing is an LGBTQ issue, employment is an LGBTQ issue, healthcare, every issue, immigration, they all intersect in ways that really make the most vulnerable in our society exploited and oppressed in so many different ways too. So lo que estaba diciendo es que, qué bueno que Cecilia mencionara la memoria de Lorena Borjas. Ella fue una gran figura, una líder en el movimiento, en las calles como la Roosevelt y también por toda la ciudad para ponerle atención en la lucha por la gente trans. Así que descanse en paz. Y yo conozco muy bien la amistad entre Cecilia y Lorena, dos luchadoras en el movimiento. Así que ustedes pueden leer el artículo que Cecilia ha escrito después de que Lorena se falleció sobre la historia y el gran trabajo de Lorena Borjas. Y bueno, estaba es muy importante lo que dijo Cecilia sobre la intersección entre todos los asuntos en la sociedad, como cada asunto de derechos humanos, como la vivienda, como la salud, como la inmigración, es un asunto de los derechos de la gente trans también. Y nosotros en el movimiento, como el movimiento de housing, como yo, o el movimiento de los derechos por la comunidad LGBTQ, la realidad es que COVID simplemente ha empeorado la lucha por los más vulnerables en nuestra sociedad. Esta lucha ha existido antes de COVID, pero sabemos nosotros que por el hecho de COVID, ahora esas personas, los más vulnerables, están sufriendo más y más ahora. Y ahora todo el mundo puede ver cómo el sufrimiento, puede ver el sufrimiento de todas esas comunidades. Y Bueno, in English, Cecilia, what I wanted to ask you next is you spoke so much and so powerfully about discrimination in the healthcare system against trans people. One of the biggest fights that you're involved in that is right now consuming our whole state and our city as well is to repeal the walking while trans ban. And how important that is, that fight. And so I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what exactly is the walking while trans ban and how can all of us as community residents be involved in this fight too to repeal it. En español, una de las grandes luchas ahora es el borrar de la prohibición de walking while trans. Y Cecilia nos puede contar qué es la lucha para eliminar esa prohibición y cómo nosotros como una comunidad, cómo nos unimos a esta lucha también.
Thank you for the question again. Walking while trans is a terrible piece of legislation and is part of the criminal code that criminalize people who engage in sex work. And walking while trans, what basically what the legislation says is that the legislation, the name of the legislation is actually loitering for purposes of prostitution, right? And that piece of the code says that police officers and law enforcement under the suspicion that a person is engaging in the exchange of sex for money or for whatever they are exchanging sex, are able to stop and frisk you. Myself, I experienced that many times. Even if I was exchanging sex, or sometimes I wasn't. I was, walking to get bread. I remember one time I was actually walking to get bread. Wow. And I was stopped by the police and they accused me of being loitering for purposes of prostitution. Sometimes they would let me go, but sometimes I was sent to see a judge. And those like small offenses ended up at a certain time to have me sent to Rikers Island. So the extent of these arrests that could be considered small arrests, is not such a thing as small when it comes to an arrest. An arrest is an arrest. It just it stain your record. It's a traumatic event. Is something that nobody should go through. So what we are trying to do is to take this piece of the code down so people could walk the streets comfortably without fear of being stopped by the police. And this took the name of walking while trans, not because it affects only trans people. It affects people of all genders. It affects people of all backgrounds. But what happened is that because of trans people are sometimes more more affected by these is because the police has a tendency to stop trans people, stop trans people in the streets, and specifically in Roosevelt Avenue. Mm-hmm. They know that it's a big trans population in Roosevelt Avenue. We've been part of that community for a long time. We have been we inserted ourselves in that community. It took a lot of work for the rest of Roosevelt Avenue and for the rest of Jackson Heights to really grasp into our reality. And we are very proud to be inserted in the community. When I go, I don't live in Jackson Heights, but when I go to Jackson Heights, I feel like I'm part of the community. The community respect me. The community see me as part of it, though. But the only ones that didn't get the memo is the police, right? Who continues to harass us and continue to arrest us. Why do they have the right to arrest us? Because it's a piece of legislation that say that they can suspect us of being engaging in sex work. And for that, they have the right to stop us and frisk us. And many of those are, stop and frisk end up in arrest. And many of those arrests end up in people being sent to Rikers Island.
Yep.
And even if the city of New York says that they don't communicate with ICE, I remember being in Rikers Island, and guess who came for me?
Yeah.
ICE.
Wow.
And I end up with a deportation order, you know? So sometimes something as simple as a stop and freeze may end up having incredible repercussions for a person. And the population that suffer the most of these is the trans community. That's why we call it walking while trans. So un poquito en español lo que quiero decir es que el walking while trans, caminando mientras, al ser trans, es una legislación. Es una legislación que es, en realidad se refiere al estar vagabundeando, se llamaría en español, que quiere decir que la policía tiene derecho a sospechar que una persona que está caminando o parada en una esquina está cambiando sexo por dinero o por cualquier cosa que sea que uno cambie sexo, ¿verdad? Debido a que tienen este derecho, la policía te puede parar y te puede revisar. Muchas veces estas paradas y estos episodios pueden terminar siendo arrestos. Y muchas veces estos arrestos pueden terminar mandándote a Rikers. Es una cosa muy terrible. Más allá de que digamos que estos son arrestos menores, que ningún arresto es menor. Cualquier arresto es traumático, es inconveniente, te mancha tu récord, es una cosa que no le deseo a nadie. Pero bajo va a decir estos son arrestos menores, pero estos arrestos menores pueden tener terribles efectos en la vida de la gente. Como decía, se llama Walking While Trans o Caminando como Trans, porque esta legislación afecta a todo el mundo, a cualquier gente de cualquier género, pero en realidad afecta mucho más terriblemente a gente trans, porque la policía continúa molestándonos, continúa instigándonos, continúa arrestándonos desproporcionadamente. Más que nada en Jackson Heights y en Roosevelt Avenue. Yo puedo decir que la comunidad trans se ganó el respeto de la comunidad de Jackson Heights, y la comunidad nos ha apoyado. Cada vez que yo voy a Jackson Heights me siento parte de la comunidad. La comunidad es muy amiga la comunidad de Jackson Heights es muy amiga de la comunidad trans. Lamentablemente los únicos que parece que nos siguen odiando es la policía, porque continúan molestando y continúan arrestándonos desproporcionadamente. Por eso es tan importante que cambiemos esta legislación, porque nosotros, nosotras y nosotres tenemos el derecho de vivir tranquilos, de que nadie nos moleste y de poder tener una vida como cualquier otro.
That's la verdad, Cecilia. And, you know, I thank you for that explanation too of exactly what the fight is about and what the ban is as well, and how it's been so, in such a discriminatory way, it's been enforced, right? I think, you know, one thing you said too, it's so true that no charge, no arrest is minor, because the consequences just ripple through from the arrest itself, the stop and frisk, all the way till after, as you know, to after you leave Rikers, and every consequence that comes because of that too, for so many. And I even think of the story of Leilin Polanco, which is such a tragedy too, which also started right from consensual sex work that the police had then trumped up as a charge, and she went in and she totally mistreated within Rikers Island itself too, where trans inmates are not incarcerated based on gender identity, but also but based on you know, such discriminatory reason that still plague our system too. And the conditions were so horrible for her. And I think that, you know, it just goes to show you how these kinds of really terrible and false arrests, the consequences ripple throughout the system in so many different ways. So I'm glad that you mentioned that too when you said that. And also, it's just shocking to me too how, you know, Jackson Heights is the birthplace, as you know well, the birthplace of the LGBTQ movement in Queens. But still, when you go on Roosevelt Avenue, how many trans people, especially trans women of color, are harassed by the police too. I'm glad you made that connection as well, because we see it every day, the hate crimes, the everyday harassment, the arrests. And that contradiction, I think, is where the struggle is right now too, and the fight is for really dignity and equality as well for all of our communities, because that contradiction is so glaring to me as well. Brevemente en español, con las palabras de Cecilia, me acuerdo de la historia de Lelín Polanco, que había sufrido mucho por un arresto, por trabajo sexual consensual, por un arresto falso. Y pues ella enfrentaba mucha discriminación en la cárcel también en Rikers, y su historia es muy, muy trágica y un ejemplo de la manera como esos delitos, esos pequeños, no son pequeños en realidad y tienen consecuencias muy, muy graves y devastadoras. Bueno, y también es muy horrible para mí y una gran contradicción cuando se dice que Jackson Heights es el lugar de nacimiento del movimiento LGBTQ. Y eso es algo muy, muy bueno y increíble. Pero también, a pesar de que es el lugar de nacimiento, también en la Roosevelt se ve cada día el hostigamiento y los arrestos por la policía de gente trans también. Así que esa contradicción, ahí está la lucha para, de una manera real, proteger a los derechos humanos de todas las comunidades. Cecilia, one thing I also wanted to ask you as well was to talk a bit about, you mentioned it too in talking about Jackson Heights and Roosevelt Avenue too, but one of the most important things that we've talked about a lot too is the elimination of the vice squad in the NYPD. For those who don't know, can you say a little bit about what exactly is the Vice Squad? And you're also, I should add, the founder of Decrim NY too, which is a movement to decriminalize sex work that I think ties in very much to the Vice Squad as well. So, si usted puede contarnos un poco qué es exactamente el Vice Squad en la policía y por qué nosotros tenemos que borrar esa organización dentro de la policía. Y usted es la fundadora del movimiento Decrim NY para despenalizar el sexo, el trabajo sexual, despenalizar el trabajo sexual. Y así que usted puede decirnos un poco sobre qué es el Vice Squad y por qué tenemos que eliminarlo.
Sure. And thank you for bringing Leilin Polanco. You know, Leilin Polanco was set up by a Vice Squad officer, right? Who offered her $200 for sex. You know, I don't know the reality of everybody, but if you ask me who needs $200, I need $200, right? And you know, if Leilin needed that money and she agreed to exchange sex for $200, mind you, this was consensual sex. This was a conscious decision that she made to exchange sex for that money. And if we talk about body autonomy, right, what is more important than body autonomy than the autonomy to be able to make decisions about what we do with our body, right? So she was set up by a Vice Squad. So that's what Vice do. Vice goes all around in the streets, in the internet, in the massage parlors, setting people up in the ideas of exchanging money for sexual favors. They do all of these under the pretenses that they are looking for victims of trafficking. And I'm not saying that victims of trafficking are not there, and I'm not saying that it should not be any kind of trafficking, because trafficking is not just sex trafficking. Trafficking happen in restaurants. Trafficking happen in the domestic service industry, right? But Vice takes special attention to people who engage in the sex work industry, and under the pretenses that they are looking for people who may be in trafficking situations, they arrest everybody. They arrest people who are engaging in sex work consensually, like most of people in the sex trade industry do, right? So they do that, and they ruin the lives of so many people who, for whatever situation, have to engage in sex work. And they create incredible trouble for people to continue living their lives. It's hard to live when you have an arrest in your record, you know? So I think it's about to be 2021. If we are as progressive as we say we are, we should all be able to find ways to identify people who are being trafficked in ways that are not as terrible as arresting everybody. We should all work together to find other ways to identify people who may be in trafficking situations without arresting people up and down, people who are making conscious decisions to exchange whatever sex they want to exchange for whatever they want to exchange it for. So Vice has no place in our community. They have only created trauma on the sex workers community. They have only created an incredible amount of arrest in the community. They have sent people to jail up and down. They are responsible for so many deportations of people who are not bothering anybody. They're just trying to make their living.
Survive. Yeah.
So, en español, bien rapidito, Vice es una parte de la policía que va y arresta a personas que están haciendo trabajo sexual. Leilín Polanco fue una de esas personas. Ella fue engatusada, no sé cómo se dice, será como enredada en cambiar sexo por dinero por una persona de Vice, que esto terminó mandándola a la cárcel, donde la pusieron en isolación y donde ella murió de un ataque de epilepsia, lamentablemente. Entonces, Vice hace esto. Vice va y busca a gente que está haciendo trabajo sexual en la calle, en el internet, en sus casas, en los lugares donde hacen masaje, por ejemplo, y las enredan para hacer un cambio de dinero por sexo. Y mucha gente es enredada en este tipo de dinámica y termina en la cárcel o termina con un récord. Y ellos lo hacen bajo las pretensas de decir que están buscando a gente que está siendo traficada. Yo no digo que no haya gente que es traficada, lamentablemente, pero el tráfico no solamente pasa en la industria sexual, el tráfico pasa con las sirvientas, el tráfico pasa con la gente que trabaja en restaurantes, el tráfico pasa con gente que es indocumentada, el tráfico pasa de muchas cosas más allá del trabajo sexual. Ellos lo que hacen es, bajo la pretensa de que están buscando a personas que están siendo traficadas, arrestan a todo el mundo y crean una cantidad de trauma increíble. Estamos a unos días de empezar el 2021. Yo creo que si esta ciudad quiere llamarse progresiva, como decimos que somos progresivos, todos tenemos una oportunidad de crear un sistema por el cual podemos buscar a personas que están siendo traficadas sin crear el tipo de trauma que Vice crea, sin arrestar a todo el mundo y sin poner a todo el mundo a través de esta increíble historia de trauma y de dolor que son los arrestos. es hora de que lo hagamos, yo creo que lo podemos hacer y vice no es necesario, no deberíamos por qué tener vice.
Exacto, exacto. And Cecilia, one thing, and I know we want to open it up to a couple of questions I see coming in as well, but one last question I have for you, just briefly, is we've talked before about the state of trans rights across the world. I know we talked about India and the trans community in India, and how much discrimination the trans community in India has faced too. We've talked about trans rights in Argentina as well. And you know, all the state of trans rights in the world, but we've also seen the way that there are other parts of the world that have done far more to advance trans rights than even the US has. And so one of the things that you mentioned, which is a core part of our platform too, is to create a program for jobs or job reservations in government for trans people, giving them the education, the training, which exists, as I understand, in other parts of the world too. So I was just wondering if you could briefly talk about why is that so important? What would that look like in our city, and why is that so needed?
Yeah, sure. You know, India has, for example, has like has passed like groundbreaking pieces of legislation for hydras, which I believe they don't want to be called hydras anymore. They have another name, right? I have to actualize it. I'm so sorry for you. So, you know, in my country where I'm from, Argentina, for example, Argentina has what is called el cupo laboral, which is a percentage of the labor in government. 2% of the government jobs have to go to trans people. They said, like, you know, what is the percentage of trans people in Santa Fe, where I'm from? 2%. Okay, 2% of the jobs in government have to go to trans people. That's only fair, right? Yep. In where I'm from, in the state that I'm from, people who has survived the dictatorship as trans and who was like arrested and tortured are getting reparations. They're getting a pension, a reparations pension. So it's so much that we can do to first right the wrong done in the past. You know, we have an opportunity to right the wrongs done to the trans community in the past and create a present and a future where trans people can live like anybody else. When people ask, like, oh, why so many trans people engage in sex work? The answer is very simple. We can't get jobs.
Yeah.
We can't finish school. We don't have housing. We don't have families who support us. So if we create an environment where trans people are seen as equal, are part of the community, are able to go to school, are able to have a job, and because they have a job and they have a salary, are able to pay the rent, a rent that is not incredibly expensive, like in most of New York City, trans people don't have to do as much as sex work. Of course, those who choose to do it, they should be able to, because that's body autonomy. But we have an opportunity to create a reality for trans people where they are truly part of the community. So en español, bien poquitito, hablaba de algunas de las increíbles legislaciones que se han pasado en India por los derechos trans, o las legislaciones de Argentina, donde soy yo, donde la gente tiene trabajo en el gobierno, 2% de los trabajos en el gobierno tienen que ir a gente transgénero. Son demasiadas las cosas que están pasando alrededor del mundo, y Nueva York tiene la oportunidad de, primero, corregir un pasado de discriminación que la comunidad ha pasado, ¿verdad? Y segundo, una oportunidad de crear un presente y un futuro en el cual la comunidad trans tiene oportunidades de vivir como cualquier otra persona. Una oportunidad donde la comunidad trans tiene la oportunidad de ir a la escuela, tiene la oportunidad de conseguir un trabajo, tiene la oportunidad de tener un salario y con ese salario poder pagar su renta y poder comprar sus alimentos como toda otra persona. Esto no pasa porque la discriminación nos ha afectado tanto y nos sigue afectando de una manera por la cual es difícil ir a la escuela, es difícil conseguir trabajo, es difícil tener un salario, es difícil pagar la renta. Pero todos tenemos una oportunidad de hacer algo y de corregir todas esas cosas malas que han pasado en el pasado y crear un futuro nuevo lleno de esperanza.
Fueron palabras poderosas y muy importantes. Thank you, Cecilia. Muchísimas gracias, Cecilia. And I want to also take a few questions from the audience as well. So Gail had a question. Are there any existing LGBTQ educational training programs for healthcare workers, for example, at Elmhurst Hospital, or LGBTQ advocates for patient intake? So en español, ya existen programas educacionales de LGBTQ para educar a los trabajadores en el sistema de salud pública. Por ejemplo, en Elmhurst Hospital hay abogados o pues organizadores LGBTQ en el hospital que pueden pues hablar con la gente y con quienes se enferme de una manera de una manera más abierta y sin discriminación.
Thank you for that question, Gail. You know what? It's like that would be a dream come true for me. Unfortunately, it's not trainings for essential workers in the healthcare industry. You know, unfortunately, healthcare workers are extremely overworked and underpaid. And, you know, even using a couple of their hours for a training, it would be considered, you know, out of this world, because like they're always working, they're working. So I would love to create a system of training for healthcare workers. It would be a dream for me. So I think, you know, I remember I went to do a class to a nursing school, and, you know, I went to did a class of trans people, about trans people and how to give better care to trans people. And I thought, like, you know, that was a class, part of a series of classes. And they're like, no, this is the only hour that we get about trans people. So, you know, imagine a nurse doesn't have any training. So I'm not blaming nurses. I'm blaming the education system. I'm blaming the healthcare system. I'm blaming the government, who does not do enough to educate the people who are going to care for us when we go to the hospital. It was a piece of legislation passed last year, I believe in 2020, by Carolina Rivera, that include patient navigators who are LGBTQ and trans in the hospitals, in city hospitals. So that is a step forward, but it's much more to do. You know, having a patient navigator in a hospital is not only it's not gonna fix everything. We need to educate healthcare workers. We need to educate our doctors, our nurses. We need to educate the community about our rights. You know, it's so much to do. Un poquito en español, lo que Gail preguntó es si hay educación para gente que trabaje en el hospital, enfermeros, doctores. Y lamentablemente no hay nada. Lamentablemente la educación de las personas que trabajan en servicios médicos que tenga que ver con gente transgénero es muy poca. Yo fui a dar una clase una vez a una clase de una gente que iban a ser enfermeros, y cuando llegué pensé que iba a ser parte de muchas clases, de un ciclo de clases, y me dijeron, no, esta es la única hora que tenemos para hablar de problemas trans, y yo me quería morir, porque entonces como que tiene sentido el hecho de que la gente que trabaja en la salud no sabe nada de gente transgénero. Entonces yo no culpo a las gentes del sistema médico, lo que culpo es al sistema educativo que no ofrece educación, lo que culpo es a la ciudad y a los gobiernos que no se ocupan de incorporar educación de la comunidad trans para gente que van a ser nuestros próximos servicios médicos. Así que, como le decía a Gail en inglés, sería un sueño mío el poder crear un sistema de entrenamientos para la comunidad que trabaja, que nos da servicios en el sistema de salud de la ciudad. Pero eso es algo que solamente pasaría si la ciudad hace un esfuerzo por crearlo.
Thank you, Cecilia. And there are two more questions here, one from Christian and also one from Millie too, that I wanted to pass along as well. So Christian asked from Facebook, I think this is an important question for the debate and to also understand the issues too, because I'm sure others have this question as well. Christian says, full decriminalization of sex work isn't the answer. What about exploitation? What about traffickers, buyers, and exploiters? Isn't decriminalization just normalizing exploitation? And so, brevemente en español, yo voy a tratar de traducirlo con todas estas palabras difíciles, pero Christian tuvo la pregunta es que despenalizar totalmente de trabajo sexual no es la respuesta correcta. ¿Qué vamos a hacer sobre la explotación, sobre los traffickers y buyers, exploiters? Con despenalizar trabajo sexual es una manera de normalizar explotación.
Gracias por la pregunta. Thank you for the question, Christian. We are going to have to disagree here. It is proven if you look at New Zealand or parts of Australia where sex work has been decriminalized, the number of cases of trafficking went down incredibly. And what happened is that people who are being trafficked are not able to report that they're trafficked because when they go to report it to the police, they are arrested for prostitution. I was trafficked. I had, part of my history as a sex worker was the history of a person who was trafficked for a while. I wanted to report that I was being trafficked, but how am I going to report that I'm being trafficked when prostitution is a crime, right? Mm-hmm. So if I know that I'm going to be arrested for prostitution when I go to report that I'm being trafficked, of course I'm not going to go to report it. So what happened when you decriminalize sex work is that people who are being trafficked are empowered to go and report this trafficking. And then you look at those cases specifically, and if you have to prosecute, you prosecute the person who is being a trafficker. I'm not against that, So it is proven, and you can look at statistics from New Zealand and parts of Australia where sex work has been decriminalized. The cases of trafficking have went down dramatically, not only because of that, because I'm gonna tell you, when I was talking about like ways to look for people who are being trafficked without arresting anybody. The person who is gonna help you identify a victim of trafficking in the sex industry is another sex worker. We are the ones who know who's being trafficked and we can help, right? So criminalization is not really the answer. Criminalization is not helping sex workers and is not helping people who are being trafficked either, unfortunately. That is a myth that has been created by law enforcement and by, unfortunately, many organizations who make a lot of money out of working in the trafficking, with trafficking. So that is, unfortunately, I have to fully disagree with you. And I'm glad to have this space where we can have different ideas.
Absolutely.
And I hope I can help you understand a little better the fact that criminalization does not help anybody. And the idea when you said that buyers, not all buyers are bad people. Clients are clients. And I'm sure that somebody who works in a Dunkin' Donuts have faced terrible clients as much as people who work in the sex trade have faced terrible clients. Customers are customers, and they're good ones and they're bad ones. So saying that buyers are bad is a terrible mistake for what continues to create this terrible layer of stigma that continues to create criminalization. And criminalization doesn't work for any community.
And I think, Cecilia, also another point that as I understand it too, is that by decriminalizing sex work as well, you can actually devote more resources and attention to combating trafficking, ¿no? Como yo entiendo es que con el despenalizar de trabajo sexual, se puede pues dar más recursos y más servicios para combatir el trafficking.
Por supuesto, y imagínate con millones y millones que se lleva en Vice y la cantidad de trabajo increíble que se podría hacer creando oportunidades de trabajo, creando oportunidades de educación, crear programas en el cual podamos identificar a personas que han sido traficadas sin tener que crear este terrible trauma que crea el momento del arresto. No sé si vos, Cristian, alguna vez has sido arrestado, espero que no, pero yo, como una persona que ha sido arrestada, muchas veces, te puedo decir que es una cosa terrible, es terrible, terrible, terrible. Yo sigo yendo, hace 10 años que estoy en terapia, y después de 10 años en terapia, lo que más hablo es del trauma que me ha creado haber sido arrestada violentamente por la policía. In English, I'm going to say, Christian, that, if we are able to take those millions and millions of dollars that the police get to maintain Vice, for example, and we use them to create education programs, work programs, programs to identify victims of trafficking without arresting everybody, we would be making amazing change. I have to tell you, I hope you've never been arrested. I have been arrested many times. And I have to tell you that after 10 years of therapy, sometimes I continue talking about my history of trauma with the police during my arrest. It's something that has incredible trauma in my mind. So I'm telling you, I'm advocating for arresting, even if it's in name of trafficking people, is not the answer. We can all do that without arresting everybody. And thank you for disagreeing. I love that question. I love being challenged. I think we all have an opportunity to debate topics that are as important. Thank you, Christian. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christian. Thank you for asking that important question too. The last question before I close out for the night comes from Millie Sandoval, who wanted to know, are there any outreach programs in Jackson Heights reaching our trans family? Hay programas en Jackson Heights que están sirviendo y apoyando a nuestra familia trans en Jackson Heights.
Por supuesto. Tenemos el grupo de mi querida amiga Lorena Borjas, que ahora lo está manejando mi amiga Liam Winslet. So we have this group called Colectivo Intercultural Transgrediendo. It's the intercultural collective. And they do amazing work. During the pandemic, we were able to give hundreds and hundreds of food pantry bags. We were able to help people pay their phones so they could be connected, trans people. We were able to help them with rent. We were able to do groups where we were able to talk to each other. So all of this is done by Colectivo Cultural Transgrediendo. It's a intercultural collective transgressing. That's the name in English. Yes. It doesn't make much sense though, but they're amazing.
Amazing.
They're in the same location that the Voces Latina is. Voces Latina also do amazing work. CHN is doing a lot of work in healthcare, and I know that Apicha is about to open a clinic. They are in Jackson Heights to help the community. So it is work being done, and it is beautiful. The community is a beautiful community. The trans community is a beautiful community, and we help each other with so much care and so much love. So thank you, Mili, for all that work. Oh, ACQC also. ACQC is doing amazing work. I'm sorry. I know
that I'm going to forget. Too, right?
I'm going to forget somebody. I'm so sorry. I have so much in my mind, and I'm thinking English and Spanish at the same time.
I know, go back and forth.
So, para todo lo que le estaba diciendo a Mili es que está el colectivo intercultural Transgrediendo, que ha hecho mucho trabajo, especialmente desde la pandemia, dando comida, dando dinero para pagar el teléfono, dando dinero para la renta, dando apoyo de comunidad, muchas cosas. También está ACQC, Apicha, que está por abrir una clínica, CHN, que da servicios médicos. La comunidad transgénero es una comunidad hermosa y nos ayudamos mucho entre nosotros, y es una oportunidad muy hermosa de hacer este trabajo. Gracias a todos por haber estado aquí. Thank you to everybody for being here tonight, and thank you, Shekar, for the work that you do, for being such an amazing ally. And you know, your platform is one of the most comprehensive platforms that I've seen from any city council candidate. It's a platform that reflects the needs, not only of the trans community, but reflects the needs of Jackson Heights, reflects the needs of Queens, and reflects the needs of the city of New York that we love so much.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for everything you said, for being a part of tonight too. I'm so moved. And you know, like you said, there's so many amazing groups and organizations doing our work for our trans community here in Jackson Heights too. I'll Make the Road is also one as well.
Oh, and, Make the Road! Exactly. Oh my God!
Don't worry, like Vivienda Garcia. There's so many that are doing such incredible work. But it's a testament to, I think when you say, how can I remember them all? It's because there's so many doing such incredible work. So I just wanted to say thank you, Cecilia, for all that you've said too, but most importantly, for all the work that you do that people like myself look up to so much. You've inspired me. You still inspire me so much in what you do. And it's just, it's actually an honor for me to be able to talk to you about these issues and have you here too. And I take so much notes and follow your example too in all of this work. So I would, en español, bueno, lo que está diciendo es que hay muchos grupos en el movimiento aquí en Jackson Heights, como colectivo, como Make the Road, como activistas líderes como Vivienda Garcia y todas las otras personas que están haciendo tanto, y es un reflejo de todo el apoyo y los recursos en Jackson Heights para la comunidad transgénero. Es muy especial y importante. Bueno, para mí, gracias Cecilia para todo lo que ha dicho usted, pero la realidad es que fue un honor haber tenido la oportunidad de hablar con usted sobre todos estos asuntos y todo lo que podemos hacer nosotros como una ciudad para avanzar y defender estos derechos humanos de nuestra familia trans. Y bueno, para mí usted es una inspiración y yo estoy tomando notas de usted y de sus esfuerzos grandes en nuestra ciudad. Así que muchísimas gracias. Everyone joined tonight too. Thank you so much. You can check out our platforms at www.voteshaker.com. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Gracias por escuchar. Soy Shekar Krishnan y buenas noches a todos. Gracias.
Bye. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.